Let's talk WrestleMania. I'd like to start here. Whether it's fans or whether it's even wrestlers looking to learn, like which of your WrestleMania matches do you get asked about the most?
Um, wow. It would probably be 25 with Shawn Michaels. Um, that's probably, as far as I'm concerned, and my body of work, that is the epitome of a great story, great characters, and then the ability to pay it off in the ring with the quality of match. I think it was probably one of my finest moments, as far as technically. There was such a huge build up to that match, and my gosh, with Shawn's storied career and my storied career, we were in the twilight of our own careers, but I remember them not putting us on last. And we both kind of took that as a slap in the face. And it was kind of like we looked at each other and like, all right, who's going to follow this? And that's good kind of ego, because you always want to go out and you always want to be at the top of the page, and you always want to go out and perform and have people try and follow you. And it's like, I don't know how familiar you are with Jerry Lee Lewis, but he used to, after he would play, he would set his piano on fire because nobody could follow him. It was just, that was kind of our motto. And then that night, I mean, I think we delivered on every aspect of storytelling, match quality. It was just a really special night where everything clicked, and I think it was everything good about what wrestling is.
We asked Shawn about that match, and he said, afterwards he felt like, if this was the last one, I'd be good, because there's no way to go up from here. In his mind, it was like, this is the first time I really feel at peace and satisfied with a match. How did you feel when you got backstage?
I actually had the same feeling. Like, there's there's always, and I'm always a kind of a pessimist when it comes to my matches. Like, I would never watch my matches back with anybody else. I'd have to sit by myself so I could pick them apart and say, wow, I should have done this there, and I should have done this. Not that night, everything other than missing the cameraman on the dive over the top, which even that added to the story, because it was such a nasty bump that I took. But even that played into the whole, it ended up, it turned into something bad into something really good. But there was just, everything was the way it was supposed to be. And there was so much ad lib in that match. And that's something that you can do when you have guys that you trust and have that kind of ring acumen. You can just, all I had to worry about that night was being the Undertaker. I didn't have to worry about Shawn and what Shawn was going to do, because I knew he was going to be right there. So those are those kind of special nights that you don't have to think for your opponent. You don't have to come up with something. He's on the same wavelength as you are. And it was the perfect storm. And I couldn't have been more happy with how that turned out.
So you had 3 WrestleMania matches with Triple H. You had this 4-year saga with Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Let's talk about 27. We talked to Hunter, and I found it very interesting that there was a back and forth with how that match would end. So you win the match, but you get carted out, which is very rare to see the Undertaker, that character, in that sort of vulnerability, especially at WrestleMania. And apparently, at first, as Hunter explains it, Vince McMahon was not in favor of this. What do you remember about particularly that ending?
Yeah, he did not like it. He did not like it at all. And to quote, my Undertaker walks out of the ring. I don't care if he wins or loses, my Undertaker walks out. And, we had already, we already knew what we were into. We were in the 3rd year of this story. And that alone is so special, to be able to continue a story for 4 years. I mean, it's unheard of in our business. And we knew what the finish was going to be, and we knew we wanted to come back. And so how do we do that? You know, yes, I won the match, but I couldn't leave on my own. You know, he walked out, he lost. And it just was like, people were just like blown away by that. Like the Undertaker could not leave. And it gave him, you know, even though he took the L, I mean, it took him, I mean, he was already a mega superstar, but it gave him the credibility of like that no one else had ever done. He left the Undertaker laying and unable to walk out. So which in turn led to me like that just getting in my head, like nobody leaves me laying. So now we got to come back and, you know, then we came back in Hell in a Cell and with Shawn as the guest referee. It was so good. It's probably, those 4 matches are probably my most proudest body of work. Just due to the story that we were able to tell. And then the ending and the end of the era and, you know, all of that at the end when we stood together at the top of the stage. I mean, that was all organic. I mean, that just happened. And, you know, it was about as real as it gets as far as respect and emotion and, you know, what our place in our industry was.
So you say that those series of matches are your most proud body of work. I have to assume that your second most proud match that you've had at WrestleMania was WrestleMania 9 against Giant Gonzalez. Am I correct? I couldn't let it go. I was going to wait and see how long I could go, but I just broke like 2 seconds. There's no way that I would win a staring contest against The Undertaker.
Yeah, yeah, Caesar's Palace, man. Yeah, that was bad on so many levels. You know, I tried really hard. I did. I tried really, really hard to make something happen there. And, you know, bless his heart. I mean, he's 7'7.5". I mean, there's just so much you can do. And, it's just there's a point where we have a stare down and it's so freaky to me to see a guy a foot taller than me. You know, I mean, I was around Andre and, you know, Big Show and all those. Giant Gonzalez was just a monster of, of humanity. Not that he was so, you know, he wasn't huge body wise, but he was just so tall. And, you know, he was pretty limited. So that's I kind of got bounced around and did whatever I could to try and make it somewhat entertaining. But yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's definitely probably right under the 4 matches, you know, right on a AAA. It's right under them. Yeah.
I'm glad you admitted that. Finally, we know. We know. Can I ask you though, like, what would you say is your first memorable match? Like if you're looking back at your body of work, especially your early matches at WrestleMania, which one are you like, yeah, this is the one where I really started to come into my own and feel proud of my work at WrestleMania? Do you have one that sticks out?
You know, it's strange. Like I think it was around the time that I worked with Flair in Toronto. And at that time I was doing the American Badass thing. But that was kind of the time where I really felt it. Yeah, a lot of those early WrestleMania matches were real. They were gimmicky to, you know, say the least. I was, you know, I had Bundy and I had, you know, a bunch of different guys. So they were more based on my gimmick, I guess, and me working the character more so than later on when I kind of started trying to, you know, get those matches that like people went, whoa, you know, that was something special. And that kind of happened, you know, started with Flair. And then I remember working with Batista in Detroit, you know, and I think there was a lot of people didn't expect much out of that match, and they thought it was going to be slow and methodical, and I thought we really had a really, really good match there. And I was really proud of that one too. But it was kind of after I'd switched back from the American Badass back into the more original Undertaker. It's kind of way I kind of use that hybrid style, which freed me up to have a more classical kind of wrestling matches. So, those are the ones I think I'm probably more proud of the ones at the end than at the beginning.
At the end of the Flair match where you're counting all your victories on your hands, was that a spur of the moment thing, or did you know you would do that going in?
I didn't even know that I had a streak going until the buildup. I think somebody had mentioned to me that day, like, hey, do you know Wrestlemania? I was oblivious to it. I was oblivious. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool, So yeah, at the end of it, I was just like, yeah, I wanted to do, and then it turned in, from that, when I did that, that's when it kind of turned into, oh, there's a streak, and and then that was obviously a big part of WrestleMania every year after that.
Couple more questions for you, Taker. By now, you've talked a lot about how the streak ended, the match with Brock in New Orleans. I don't want to necessarily ask about that match, but one thing I found interesting was every time I talk to an opponent of yours at WrestleMania, they always mention, at some point the question was asked or there was a conversation. Doesn't matter. I don't know how far it gets, but they always talk about, well, what do you think about ending the streak? Or what are your opinions on this? And all of them always say no, at least the ones that we've talked to. Right. I'm curious, along the way, even before Brock, how often was it brought up to you, the jeopardy of the streak or the idea of the streak ending, if ever?
I think it really never reached me. I think within the creative meetings, I think Vince had he had a couple of instances where he was considering beating me. And I think it was total mutiny. I think everybody else was like, no, there's no. This is, we have the Royal Rumble, which the winner of the Rumble gets to choose who he's going to wrestle for the title, which is, okay, that's one main event. And then, the other main event was, all right, who goes after the streak? And, I think that sometimes that may have gotten lost, in those booking meetings, but until the Brock thing came along, I think I wasn't privy to it, but from what I understand, Edge was going to go over when I wrestled him, and he refused. He said, no, that's not the right thing to do. And so he dropped the title to me at WrestleMania. So that's how invested everybody was in the streak. And I'm so thankful for guys like that to go to bat for me and to, keep that thing alive as long as we did. Cause we had a ton of equity built up by the time that Brock, he beat the streak, but it was, I think at the end it was kind of like, okay, yeah, Vince kind of realized, yeah, we do have something special here. I don't think he really thought initially that it was that big a thing. But everybody else is like, no, this is big. This is as big as the main event. And of course, going with Shawn, the second time it was career versus the streak, and so it was always, a main event type match for Mania. So yeah, it was very, very special, and it's just crazy how it all happened, really.
So WrestleMania 37 happening this weekend on Peacock. The Last Ride, great documentary, chronicles your last few years in big detail, including the Boneyard match that you had against AJ Styles. How do you think obviously you're not on the card, you're not being advertised at WrestleMania this year, but how do you think you will absorb WrestleMania? Watching it, there'll be fans this year. You had your big send off. How do you think that's going to affect you when you see those scenes and fans in the audience?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be surreal because I'm going to think that I need to be there. And it's funny. It's kind of started around October, because usually around October is when I go into camp and start training and start trying to get my body ready for Mania. And, you know, I purposely kind of took it easy this year after the Boneyard match, just trying to heal up. But it did around October, man, my mind and everything started going. And I'm like, no, it's not happening this year. You gotta, you know, you have to come to grips with it. And then, you know, in November, you know, when I finally said that, you know, that was it, I've been good because I'm at peace with my decision. But, you know, once the ballyhoo and all that starts for WrestleMania, man, I'm sure, you know, I'll be kind of sitting in my chair, rocking back and forth and thinking, oh man, I should be out there. Something's not right. But, you know, it's evolution, and it's time for me to step aside and let this young crop of superstars, you know, do their thing and take this, you know, take this thing and take it to another level. And, you know, I'm proud of what I was able to accomplish. And I'm anxious to see where this crop of superstars takes our industry.
Very last question for you. You've done a lot of media now. The doors are wide open. We've heard you talk at length, you know, inside stories, etc. I'm very curious, like, how far are you planning to take this? Like, will we see the Undertaker write a book or launch a podcast? Like, how far will we see this go?
You know, I don't know. People always ask me, people have been asking me for years about a book. And I always say, it's like, the things that would make my book good aren't really the things that happened in the wrestling ring. And I don't know that I'm ready to tell those stories because my mom is still alive. She has a perception of her youngest son that I do not want to tarnish in the twilight of her life. And then there's a lot of stuff that you know, that I shared with people that, like, I don't know that I want to. I don't know that I want to make $1 off of it, because those times are so special to me, and the guys that I shared, you know, good times and hard times with, you know, I'm kind of you know, there's certain things that I'm all business, and then there's other things that I just think, like, you know what, a little bit of privacy about certain things is not bad. And so, you know, it wouldn't take long to figure out, even if I changed names, it wouldn't take long to figure out who was who and, you know, who did what. And I'm not sure the statute of limitations has run out on some of the stuff that we did before cell phones. So, you know, and podcasts, and, you know, I'm considering everything. Like, I'm kind of wide open right now, and I'm trying to figure out, like, where's my lane and where do I take this? I definitely want to give back to our industry and help work with some of our young talent down in Orlando. I'm passionate about that. But right now I'm just kind of enjoying being with my family and hunting and fishing and, you know, spending time outdoors. And but I'm sure I'll get antsy and figure, like, I need to do something productive. You know, it's you can only hunt and fish so much, but I'm enjoying that right now, and just enjoying the fruits of a 34-year career, and you know, trying to, I don't know if this is the right word, but kind of detox from wrestling a little bit, because it's been my life. It's consumed my life for many years, and, you know, all my whole thought process is about, you know, what is Undertaker going to do? What is Undertaker going to do next? So it's kind of interesting and fun trying to figure out what Mark Calloway does.
Well, so, the Undertaker joining us here on ESPN, WrestleMania 37 this weekend on Peacock. Very generous with your time. This was very enlightening. A great discussion about your memories at WrestleMania and so much more. I mean, how can anyone be upset that you don't want to write a book right now because you're thinking of your mom? I think that's the greatest reason ever. And probably maybe one of the unexpected ones too. It's like, that's terrific. Taker, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on, man. WrestleMania should be awesome this year.